Miracle birth. In the quiet stretches of ancient Canaan where the nights were cold, the skies were endlessly open, and every star felt like a whisper from the divine and extraordinary. Promise was about to unfold. For decades, Prophet Ibrahim and his wife, Sarah, lived with a longing that never left their hearts, the longing for a child. They were righteous, patient, and deeply devoted, but their home remained silent, without the laughter of a little one. Years passed, then more years, and then even more. Sarah grew old, Ibrahim grew older, and the world around them whispered the same thing. It's impossible now, but the plans of the most merciful are never limited by age, time, or human expectation. One day, as Ibrahim sat outside his tent, three mysterious visitors approached, strangers who carried an aura that felt different, powerful, almost heavenly. Ibrahim welcomed them with warmth, as he always did, unaware that these were angels in human form. They brought news so astonishing that it would shake the stillness of that quiet desert. They said, "We bring you glad tidings of a knowledgeable son." Sarah, listening from behind the curtain, gasped. Her hands trembled. She couldn't hold back a shocked laugh. A child at this age, after all these years? But the angels repeated the message with certainty. It was the command of Allah. The impossible was already written to become real. And just like that, the miracle began, slow, quiet, but full of divine beauty. Sarah felt life growing inside her, something she had long accepted would never happen. Ibrahim's eyes filled with tears of gratitude, of disbelief, of a man witnessing mercy beyond imagination. Months later, on a night lit softly by the moon, a baby's cry finally filled the home that had waited decades for this moment. A son, gentle, blessed, destined for greatness, was born. They named him Ishaq, known to the world as Isaac, a child gifted not only to his parents, but to humanity. His birth wasn't just a miracle, it was a message carved into history. When God wills something to happen, even the laws of nature step aside. Ishaq's arrival marked the beginning of a new chapter in a family chosen for guidance, light, and leadership. A child born against all odds, who would one day inspire nations. The childhood wrapped in light. From the very beginning, the childhood of Prophet Ishaq wasn't ordinary. It felt touched by a gentle, sacred glow. Everyone who saw him sensed something different in this child, as if kindness and calmness followed him wherever he went. Born to parents who were already legends of faith, Ishaq grew up in an environment filled with wisdom, compassion, and constant remembrance of God. Sarah held him with a love that had waited a lifetime. Every smile he gave her felt like a reminder of divine mercy. Ibrahim, already a towering figure of faith, looked at his son with gratitude that words couldn't describe. For him, Ishaq wasn't just a child, he was a living miracle. Proof of God's promise fulfilled. As Ishaq grew, the desert became his playground. The soft sands, the endless horizon, the wind that whispered through the tents. Everything around him became a part of his early lessons. Ibrahim taught him how to walk with humility, how to speak with kindness, and how to listen for the signs of the Creator in the world around them. Unlike most children, Ishaq rarely showed stubbornness or anger. His temperament was gentle, peaceful, reflective. When he asked questions, they weren't random, they were deep, thoughtful, and filled with curiosity about life, purpose, and the world beyond what eyes can see. In the evenings, as the sky turned purple and gold, Ishaq would sit beside his father, watching the stars. Ibrahim told him stories of faith, trust, sacrifice, and the miracles he had witnessed on his journey. Ishaq listened like a student absorbs every word from a beloved teacher. Those moments shaped him, planted seeds that would one day grow into the wisdom of a prophet. He was also raised with a sense of responsibility. From an early age, he understood that he belonged to a family chosen to guide people. But this never made him arrogant. Instead, it made him quieter, more thoughtful, more grateful. Neighbors often said, "This boy carries serenity in his eyes," and they were right. Even as a child, Ishaq radiated a kind of inner peace that made people feel comforted simply by being near him. His childhood passed not in noise or chaos, but in warmth, learning, and spiritual nurturing, a foundation that would one day prepare him for leadership, prophecy, and a legacy that would last for centuries. A household chosen by heaven, the home in which Prophet Ishaq grew up wasn't just a family, it was a living academy of guidance, shaped by prophets, built on revelation, and illuminated by faith. Every corner of that home carried a history of sacrifice, patience, and unwavering trust in the Creator. Ishaq didn't simply learn from parents. He learned from two of the greatest role models humanity has ever known. His father, Prophet Ibrahim, was not only a leader of nations, but a man whose entire life was a conversation with God, full of tests, triumphs, and miracles. His mother, Sarah, carried her own legacy of courage and devotion. Together, they created an environment where spirituality wasn't taught through rules, it was absorbed naturally, through love, behavior, and living example. This was the family of prophets, a lineage chosen not for wealth, power, or numbers, but for purity of heart and strength of faith. Growing up, Ishaq witnessed something extraordinary. To branches of prophethood rising from one father, his half-brother, Ismail, lived far away in the barren valley of Makkah. Yet the bond between the families remained strong. Ishaq heard stories of Ismail's resilience, his mother Hajar's courage, and the miracle of Zamzam events that shaped their shared spiritual heritage. Inside the household, Ibrahim made sure Ishaq understood this legacy. He would say, "A leader is one who serves with sincerity. A prophet is one who walks with humility." These weren't just lessons, they were the pillars on which Ishaq's character was being built. The atmosphere around him was serene but charged with purpose. Visitors often came seeking wisdom from Ibrahim. They sat in circles around him, listening to revelations, asking questions about life, morality, and the divine. Young Ishaq sat quietly beside his father, observing everything, the compassion in Ibrahim's voice, the clarity in his guidance, the calmness in his decisions. Slowly, Ishaq learned that honor doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from living up to the responsibility of being chosen. His home was a place where angels once visited, where miracles unfolded, where decisions changed the course of history. Ishaq grew up knowing that his family wasn't ordinary, but instead of pride. It filled him with gratitude and a deep desire to serve God with sincerity. This sacred heritage shaped him, preparing him for a future where he, too, would carry the torch of guidance and continue a chain of prophets that would lead humanity for generations. Life in the blessed land of Canaan. Canaan wasn't just a place where Prophet Ishaq lived. It was the land where his character matured, where revelation touched his heart, and where his future as a leader quietly took shape. Surrounded by rolling hills, fertile valleys, and open skies that stretched endlessly, Ishaq grew in an environment that constantly reminded him of God's generosity. The region was peaceful, rich with grazing lands, flowing springs, and families who lived simple, honest lives. Ishaq often walked through the fields at dawn, when the mist still hugged the earth and the sunlight broke in soft golden lines. These early mornings became his moments of reflection, moments where he connected deeply with the signs of the Creator all around him. Life in Canaan also came with responsibility. Though he was gentle in demeanor, Ishaq developed strong skills in stewardship. He helped manage livestock, learned to guide shepherds, and ensured that every worker under his father was treated with dignity. His calm leadership made people trust him. They knew Ishaq would listen, understand, and act with fairness. The people of Canaan held great respect for Ibrahim, and automatically for Ishaq as well. But Ishaq never allowed the honor of belonging to a great prophet's family to make him arrogant. He greeted everyone with kindness, whether a traveler, a shepherd, or a child running barefoot across the fields. One of his most memorable qualities was his ability to bring peace to any gathering. If disputes arose among workers or villagers, they would often come to Ishaq. His voice carried a softness that made tempers settle. His reasoning was clear, balanced, and rooted in moral truth. Many said, "He speaks as if wisdom was born with him." Ishaq also spent many evenings by the side of his father, learning the deeper understanding of faith. Ibrahim shared with him the stories of his own struggles, the idols of his youth, the fire he was thrown into, the migration, the sacrifices. Ishaq absorbed every word, storing them in his heart like precious treasure. These lessons molded him into a man of serenity, obedience, and unwavering trust in God. Canaan became more than a home, it became a spiritual ground where Ishaq stepped into maturity, readying himself to become not just a righteous man, but a guiding light for future generations. The gentle wisdom of a chosen heart. Wisdom was not something Prophet Ishaq learned suddenly. It was something he grew into, slowly, naturally, like a tree that strengthens year after year. From a young age, Ishaq carried a softness in his voice and a depth in his eyes that made people pause and listen. But as he matured, this softness transformed into a profound wisdom that became the trademark of his personality. Ishaq's wisdom came from three places: his father's teachings, his own reflections, and the divine guidance that flowed through his heart. Unlike prophets who were sent into confrontational or rebellious societies, Ishaq's mission centered around nurturing, teaching, and guiding people gently toward righteousness. So his wisdom wasn't loud or dramatic, it was calm, steady, and quietly transformative. One of his remarkable traits was his ability to understand the emotions of others. When someone came to him with fear, he responded with reassurance. When someone came with anger, he calmed them with reason. When someone came confused, he guided them with clarity. His approach wasn't to overpower, it was to illuminate. People often said, Ishaq speaks as though his words were meant to heal. Even in daily matters, disputes over land, arguments among shepherds, or concerns from travelers, Ishaq listened carefully. He never rushed decisions. He believed wisdom lived in patience. Before giving a judgment, he allowed both sides to express themselves fully, and only then offered a solution so balanced that both parties felt understood and respected. But the true depth of Ishaq's wisdom appeared in private moments where he reflected quietly on his father's legacy, the signs of nature, and the responsibilities placed upon him. He knew he belonged to a family chosen not just for leadership, but for moral excellence, and he carried that awareness with humility. Instead of letting his status elevate him, he let it refine him. Many evenings, he would walk through the stillness of Canaan, listening to the wind sweep through the olive trees. These walks became his meditations times, where he connected deeply with God, seeking clarity, strength, and guidance. It was during these silent reflections that his wisdom blossomed the most. The people around him felt safe under his guidance. Because Ishaq wasn't just knowledgeable, he was fair, kind, and deeply connected to the truth. His wisdom became a lantern, lighting the path for his family, his community, and the generations of prophets who would come after him. A leader shaped by mercy. Leadership came to Prophet Ishaq not through force, conquest, or political power, but through character. He was the kind of leader people naturally gravitated toward, calm in times of fear, steady in times of uncertainty, and compassionate when people felt lost. His leadership style reflected the purity of his heart and the depth of his connection with God. From the moment he stepped into adulthood, the community around Canaan began looking to him for guidance. They trusted him not because he came from a prophetic family, but because he lived like someone worthy of trust. Ishaq always placed justice above favoritism, truth above pride, and mercy above punishment. When others reacted with impatience, he responded with clarity. When conflicts grew tense, he diffused them with patience. His leadership wasn't loud. It wasn't about being seen or praised. It was quiet, steady, and deeply sincere. People often said, Ishaq leads without raising his voice. And they were right. His authority came from the strength of his morals. He guided shepherds on how to resolve disputes, taught families how to live with kindness, and reminded travelers of the Creator's signs all around them. Whenever he gave counsel, it felt less like a lecture and more like a warm hand resting gently on the heart. What made Ishaq truly exceptional was his ability to balance gentleness with firmness. If someone tried to take advantage of his kindness, they quickly learned that Ishaq's calmness did not mean weakness. He could stand firm like a mountain when justice was threatened. His judgments were respected because they were never influenced by wealth, emotion, or personal interest, only truth. As a prophet, divine inspiration strengthened his leadership even further. He taught people the importance of gratitude, honesty, and humility. He reminded them that prosperity is a blessing, but a blessing that must be honored through righteousness. Under his guidance, the people of Canaan experienced a rare period of peace. Families lived without fear. Travelers moved safely, and disputes rarely turned violent. But Ishaq's greatest leadership was not in managing land or people, it was in shaping hearts. He raised a community that valued righteousness. He created an environment where faith felt natural, not forced, and his gentle leadership became a foundation for the generations who descended from him. His life stood as proof that true leadership doesn't dominate, it inspires. And Ishaq inspired everyone who crossed his path. Two brothers, one divine mission. The relationship between Prophet Ishaq and his older brother, Prophet Ismail, was unlike any ordinary sibling bond. They lived in different lands, grew up in different environments, and were shaped by different trials, yet the connection between their hearts remained strong, pure, and rooted in the same divine purpose. They were two branches of one sacred tree, two lights emerging from the legacy of Ibrahim, and two brothers chosen to guide nations. Though distance separated them, Ismail in the valley of Mocha and Ishaq in the blessed lands of Canaan, their respect for each other never faded. Letters, messages, and travelers carried news between the two regions. Ishaq often heard about Ismail's resilience, his leadership among the people of Mocha, and his unwavering obedience to God. And each time, Ishaq felt a sense of pride, knowing his brother walked a path of righteousness. Both brothers grew up hearing the same stories from their father: Ibrahim's sacrifices, his tests, his migration, and his unshakable faith. These stories shaped them differently, but connected them deeply. They knew they were part of a greater plan, two chosen heirs carrying the torch of prophethood to different corners of the world. Whenever Ibrahim traveled between the two lands, he would share heartfelt updates. He told Ishaq about the miracle of Zamzam, about Ismail helping him build the Kaaba, about how the barren valley transformed into a thriving settlement. Ishaq listened with admiration, knowing Ismail was fulfilling his own divine destiny. And Ismail, in return, heard about Ishaq's wisdom, his leadership in Canaan, his compassion, and the peace he brought to his people. He often said, with genuine affection, "My brother is a man of serenity." Their bond was built on mutual honor, not competition. They never compared achievements, never allowed jealousy to enter their hearts. They understood something bigger, that prophethood wasn't about who was greater. It was about serving the Creator faithfully. Every time they met on those rare journeys, Ibrahim arranged the moment felt sacred. To prophets, raised in different worlds, embraced like brothers who shared the same spiritual heartbeat. Their conversations were filled with gratitude, reminders of God's mercy, and hopes for the communities they were guiding. Their unity became a message that true brotherhood is built not on proximity, but on purpose. Ishaq and Ismail became the fathers of two great prophetic lineages, one leading to Isa, Jesus, the other to Muhammad, yet their hearts always beat with the same truth. Two brothers, two missions, one divine legacy, the father who shaped a future prophet. Raising his son Yaqub was one of the greatest responsibilities and blessings of Prophet Ishaq's life. From the moment Yaqub was born, Ishaq sensed something extraordinary in him: a gentleness, a clarity, and a spiritual glow that felt familiar. Perhaps it was because Ishaq saw pieces of himself in his son, or perhaps it was because he knew Yaqub was destined to carry the torch of prophethood after him. But Ishaq didn't raise Yaqub as a future leader. He raised him as a child who needed love, guidance, and moral strength. Every lesson Ishaq taught came from a place of tenderness. Every word he spoke carried the weight of experience passed down from Ibrahim. Their household became a quiet sanctuary where wisdom flowed through generations like a sacred river. From a young age, Yaqub would sit by his father's side, listening with wide, attentive eyes. Ishaq taught him kindness first, how to speak with respect, how to treat workers fairly, how to show mercy even when he had power. He taught him patience, the kind his own parents, Ibrahim and Sarah, embodied throughout their lives. And he taught him faith, that beautiful trust in God that had carried their family through impossible miracles. Yaqub absorbed these lessons like fertile soil absorbs rain. Ishaq also recognized the importance of nurturing Yaqub's spiritual heart. He often walked with him through the fields at dawn, pointing out the signs of the Creator, the rising sun, the grazing animals, the flowing streams, the clouds moving with purpose across the sky. These weren't simple observations. They were reminders that everything in life is connected through God's design. There were days when Ishaq saw Yaqub sitting alone, thinking deeply. Instead of interrupting, he let him reflect. He knew that a future prophet needed room to grow his own relationship with God. But Ishaq's parenting wasn't only gentle, it was wise. When Yaqub faced dilemmas or moments of frustration, Ishaq guided him with balanced counsel. He taught him that leadership requires humility, that greatness requires gratitude, and that a pure heart is the strongest protection any human can carry. Over time, the bond between father and son became unbreakable. Ishaq didn't just raise Yaqub, he shaped him, protected him, and prepared him for a life of immense spiritual responsibility. And when revelation would one day touch Yaqub's heart, the world would see the legacy of Ishaq living on through him. Faith that stood through silent trials. Prophet Ishaq's life may appear peaceful compared to the dramatic trials faced by his father Ibrahim or his brother Ismail, but beneath that calm surface were tests that shaped his soul with quiet strength. His trials were not the kind that came with fire, knives, or migrations. His were the kind that tested the heart, tests of patience, responsibility, separation, and the weight of carrying a prophetic legacy. One of Ishaq's earliest trials was simply living in the shadow of extraordinary parents. Being the son of Ibrahim, the man who broke idols, walked through fire, and nearly sacrificed his own child meant. Ishaq constantly felt the responsibility to uphold that legacy. Yet he never complained. He carried that weight with grace, understanding that honor always comes with duty. Another of his trials was distance. His beloved brother Ismail lived far away in Mecca. Though their hearts were bonded, their lives unfolded in different lands. Ishaq often longed for those moments of brotherly companionship, but he accepted the separation as part of God's plan. This distance taught him emotional resilience and strengthened his trust in the wisdom of the Almighty. Ishaq also faced trials through leadership, calming disputes, guiding tribes, resolving conflicts. These weren't small challenges. The burden of being the moral anchor for an entire region tested his patience and endurance daily. Sometimes he had to mediate arguments fueled by ego, greed, or fear. Sometimes he had to make decisions that weighed heavily on his heart. But every time, he turned to God for clarity, and every time, God guided him. Yet the deepest trial of Ishaq's life was personal, the quiet fear of losing the peace he spent years building. Canaan was blessed, but not untouched by threats. Rival tribes, moments of drought, and political tensions all hovered at the edges. Ishaq often found himself standing between danger and his people, praying with sincere humility for protection. And through each trial, Ishaq's faith only grew stronger. He understood something profound. Not every test is loud. Some are silent. Some happen inside the heart. He learned that faith isn't proven only through dramatic sacrifices. It is proven through daily patience, through choosing righteousness when no one is watching, and through trusting God even when life feels uncertain. By the end of his journey, Ishaq's life itself became a testimony of faith, steady, unwavering, graceful. A reminder that sometimes the quietest souls carry the strongest hearts. A legacy written in peace. As Prophet Ishaq reached the later years of his life, a sense of deep calm settled around him like a gentle sunset, spreading gold over the horizon. His journey had not been loud or dramatic, but it had been powerful in a quieter, more enduring way. Ishaq's legacy was not carved in battles or miracles. It was written in peace, gentleness, and unwavering devotion to God. The people of Canaan often said, "When Ishaq walks, tranquility walks with him." And it was true. Wherever he went, arguments softened, tempers cooled, and hearts opened. He guided generations not through force, but through example. His life reminded everyone that true strength doesn't always roar, it sometimes whispers. In his final years, Ishaq spent much of his time with his family, watching the future unfold through his children and grandchildren. He saw Yaqub growing into a man of remarkable character-wise, patient, humble, and deep within, he knew that the chain of prophethood would continue through him. That knowledge brought him profound peace. He also reflected often on the legacy of his father, Ibrahim, and his brother, Ismail. Together, the three of them had carried a mission that would one day shape nations and touch billions of lives. Ishaq felt honored to be part of that sacred story. He understood that every prayer, every decision, and every act of kindness had contributed to a lineage that would someday lead to great prophets, including Yusuf, Musa, Isa, and finally Muhammad. But perhaps the greatest part of Ishaq's legacy was the spirit he left behind, a heritage of calmness, justice, and spiritual clarity. He taught people that peace begins within the heart, that wisdom grows from patience, that faith is strongest when it's humble, and that a good life isn't measured by wealth or power, but by the goodness you plant in the world. As Ishaq's final moments approached, he looked upon the blessed land of Canaan, the fields he walked as a child, the valleys where he guided his people, the skies under which he prayed countless prayers. His heart was filled with gratitude. He knew he had lived with purpose, served with sincerity, and left behind a legacy that would never fade. When he returned to his Creator, He left the world exactly as he lived in it peacefully, and his legacy remains one of the most beautiful truths of human history. A gentle heart can guide nations, and a peaceful soul can shape generations long after it is gone.